Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Innovators Livecast series. My name is Ariel Russo. I lead content and community here at Brand Innovators, and we're truly excited to welcome an exceptional lineup of marketing leaders today, featuring Sam's Club, Henkel, PGA Tour, Cody, and many more. So we encourage you to engage with today's speakers by using the chat, and as well on LinkedIn and Twitter by using the hashtag BILivecast. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome our first speakers of the day. Please welcome Natalie Height, the Marketing Director at Sam's Club, moderated by Brandy Unger, the Senior Client Partner of Retail at Nextdoor. Just to give them a moment to pop onto the screen. Hi, Brandy.
Hey, Ariel, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. I think it said 12:40 start time for Natalie and I, so she might be a few minutes late.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. Let me email our production team. All right, she's on now, so we should be hearing from her soon. Where are you based right now?
I'm in Atlanta.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, nice. So we're covering all parts, and I know Natalie is in Bentonville, so we are at least covering, the majority of the country.
Oh, that's incredible. I've heard so much about Bentonville. I need to go visit.
Same. It's kind of crazy. I started actually at Nextdoor and moved on to the retail team covering both Sam's and Walmart, but it was all during COVID. So it's been all virtual up until now. So I'm excited to get there eventually.
Oh, now you definitely have to go and you have someone to visit.
Exactly.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, I was figuring out how to do the background. Is it right? I think I have mine flipped. So is it showing right? Okay, great.
Yes.
Hi.
Well, welcome. I'll let you two kick it off and have a great session.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Natalie, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you again. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. For everybody joining, we're really excited to have you guys here. And Natalie and I actually had time to sync up yesterday just about her journey in marketing as well as her time at Sam's. So we're going to take some time and dig into that. But really quick, just introducing myself. My name is Brandy Unger. I'm based in Atlanta, and I am a senior client partner here at Nextdoor on our retail category. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Nextdoor, we are the neighborhood hub where neighbors are able to go in and plug into the neighborhoods that truly matter to them. And I personally, from a marketing and advertising standpoint, call it the cul-de-sac of the internet. So that was just a quick introduction of myself. And I want to pass it over actually to Natalie to let her introduce herself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Natalie Height. I am the Director of Brand Marketing at Sam's Club. So my primary role is to activate strategies, programs, and campaigns that ladder up to the value of membership and ultimately drive advocacy among members and consideration among prospects. And then I'm also venturing into engagement among associates. So really driving the brand forward with those three audiences.
Awesome. So jumping right in, Natalie, I did some sleuthing on your LinkedIn profile as we all do, and saw that you actually made that jump from the agency to the client side, both, covering Sam's from an advertising agency perspective and PR agency perspective over then to brand side. So what kind of made you, drove you to make that jump to client direct and stick in with that brand loyalty of Sam's Club the entire time?
Yeah, so I spent, before I joined Sam's, which today is actually my 6th anniversary of being at Sam's Club, which is wild. I started at Sam's, so I have twins who are now 6. I started at Sam's when they were 5 months old. I'd wanted to move over to the brand side for quite some time. It had been like I interviewed and then I went out on maternity leave and then they restructured the organization and then I came back and interviewed for a different job. So I remember that just being a crazy time, but an exciting time. And I knew I was ready to make the shift. Before then, I had spent 5 years at a PR agency, Mitchell Communications Group, which is still the PR agency of record for Sam's Club. Had an amazing experience there. Mitchell really focuses a lot on local activations. And I had an opportunity to work on a ton of different projects for both Walmart and Sam's, including category and sales driving initiatives, as well as corporate initiatives like women's economic empowerment and supplier diversity. And through all of that, what I really loved was the content development. And so we were focused on creating videos that spotlighted women suppliers or that spotlighted women throughout the supply chain and helped ladder up to Walmart's corporate initiatives, and creating that for really owned and earned placements. And I just wanted the opportunity to move into marketing and learn more about the paid channels and how to activate when I actually had a budget. So it was a nice change to move into and have the ability to grow a new skill and add that layer of paid media.
Well, congratulations on the 6 years at Sam's and also the twins of 6-year-old twins. Like that's incredible. Do you feel like having that agency side before going over to Sam's really helped position you for, that ladder up as you were moving through, as you've moved through the organization at Sam's?
Yeah, I think it was really helpful to me to have sort of a general understanding of how the organization worked. I think after spending 5 years on the brand, I probably came in with a lot of hubris of like, oh, I know everything I need to know. And then I had this learning curve, which was actually a great learning curve of how people work together at Sam's, and a client service role, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, and it has been a boon to me in my career and having that sort of communication skill set. But I was coming from that agency world, I was very used to like formal communications and hierarchy. And then I came to Sam's and realized that everyone was so driven to serve the member that people at all levels were just communicating rapid fire with one another. Like we didn't have time to take things through 17 layers of approval. It's like, you've got a problem to solve. We're connecting you right away with the right person to solve it, no matter cross departments, cross levels, et cetera. So it was really, really great to come on to a culture that I feel like is so aligned to a singular goal of serving the member. And then of course, working in brand, I work hand in hand with the PR team really frequently as well.
Yeah, when you're kind of coming from Sam's, which is obviously part of the larger Walmart organization, what do you feel like has kept you growing and changing throughout your experience with Sam's Club?
Yeah, a few things. One of the things about Sam's that I think is unique is just our ability to be a little bit more scrappy. Walmart as an enterprise is so big, and then Sam's Club as a business unit is still a pretty large business. I think it's valued at about $60 billion. And yet we somehow still manage to operate like a startup. Like I mentioned, there is that mindset of really operating in a member first way, and that really drives innovation. So we're not necessarily about innovation for innovation's sake. I think we're about innovation for the sake of driving convenience to the member. And that's allowed me as an individual within the organization to really do some cool things that maybe are outside of my role and kind of stretch and grow in new ways as we have this task to go and experiment and do new cool things for the brand that we haven't done before.
What are a few of the things that you've been able to experiment with that you felt like were outside of your current day-to-day role?
Yeah, I think there are a couple, and I'll give two examples that sort of show the evolution of the marketing division at Sam's Club as well. So like I mentioned, started back in 2015. At the time, I was in a role that was very category focused and very sales focused. And we used a lot of direct mail tactics because we're a membership organization. That is the most effective way to drive sales, is by targeting the people who are already members. And I saw an opportunity as I was supporting our home division that we were really talking about. We weren't really showcasing the quality of the items that we had. We had some really incredible things like 650 thread count sheets and a line of bedding developed by Christian Siriano, who I'm a huge fan of from his Project Runway days. And they weren't necessarily getting their turn in the spotlight in terms of the way that we marketed products to members. And so I gained approval from leadership, went and talked to suppliers and actually funded this home catalog. So it was a direct mail piece, but it was a really beautiful lifestyle catalog that we sent to members to in a targeted way to show off our home items. And I was really excited by the results because we saw that it did drive incremental sales across the box, proving out that if we could show members a really high quality item, that then they would choose to shop us for whatever their needs were, whether or not it was the specific couch that I was trying to sell them. It put us more top of mind for them.
So it's kind of, it's interesting what you're saying about bringing those opportunities to yourself. You had mentioned that Sam's empowers all of, the employees and all of you guys that work there to bring your full selves to work. So it does sound like that the ability to also work cross-functionally outside of your role really does enhance Sam's as a brand in general.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about bringing your whole self to work, I think that in particular was kind of a passion point for me. I'm an avid pinner, avid home decor blog follower. And so to have this experience of bringing products together and orchestrating a photo shoot and signing off on what stylists were doing was kind of a dream come true for me. And then what I'd love to see is our progression as a brand into really leading with more social first activations. In fact, I'm working on a program now where we are continuing that same goal of quality and showcasing our quality merchandise, but doing it in a social first way through videos. So we have this video series called Merchant Hero, where what we're doing is we're saying the people who have brought these items to life for you. And in some cases it's a merchant, in other cases it may be a supplier, it may be someone who was consulted in the product development, but really showing like the human who worked so hard to make sure that you got the best cup of coffee because they traveled to 5 different countries and tasted 100 different kinds of coffee, or the person who grew this tomato that is like the perfect tomato that we put in our salsa because it's like the right consistency for chopping up and it's juicy and it doesn't have that many seeds, and helping people understand that level of curation and that level of just intentionality is put into everything that we put on the shelf to help elevate the overall quality perception of the products that we have.
That's amazing. Having the people being at the center kind of also mirrors what we were talking about yesterday, of also the members being the center of the experience, especially when it comes then to the marketing and the advertising side. I would love to dig in for a moment about the social opportunities that you guys have, from both talking about like the social sphere, but then also you had mentioned yesterday about some of the localized campaigns that you guys are working on, and that one-to-one experience with not just like store associates, but then with people within the that are coming to shop as members. So we'd love to hear how that's been working out, building on that people being at the center of just the universe of the shopping experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad we're kind of thinking about it differently than what we talked about yesterday, because it's not just members at the center, it's people at the center. So I think when I think about it from a member perspective, like I mentioned, I think it's been clear to me since day one that we were a membership focused organization, and that was a core value driving the decisions that everyone made across the board. It's continued to be a focus. I would say since maybe the beginning of COVID last year, we started doing these focus groups with our members every 2 weeks. We've got a ton of small business members who are experiencing loss, closings, lots of different obstacles at that time. And then we've continued checking in with them throughout the year, and they really help us drive decision-making on everything from the hours that we operate. We actually started doing hero hours because that was a suggestion from a member. And the way that we merchandise, the way that that we talk about what we do on social, it's really been driven by the voice of the members. A kind of fun example is that our members told us consistently that they wanted samples back. And so we were able to, when we finally were able to safely reintroduce samples, we made a post that was, samples are back, you can stop yelling at us. A fun way to use our brand voice, and actually really drove some engagement for us because it was a fun way for us to announce that we were bringing back samples. You also mentioned associates, and I think keeping associates at the center is incredibly important too. That's our first line of communication with our members. So it's important that our associates really feel rallied around the cause of member service as well. We had talked a little bit yesterday about innovation, and that's something that I think has been a boon for our company. When think about things that are immediately available to the consumer, like scan and go or delivery that's being launched through Sam's Club, you immediately understand that convenience. What I think is really cool that we're doing at Sam's is a lot of behind the scenes innovation for associates. We've got apps that help associates do quick health screenings when they come in to save time. We have an app called Ask Sam, where an associate can literally just ask a question like, hey, how many pairs of pink shoes do we have left? And they can find it anywhere in the store. It allows them to quickly get answers and spend more time on the floor serving members and less time going and looking up information.
Yeah, and it almost, knowing that their lives are also easier kind of makes the entire shopping experience better across the board. As a person who loves a good sample, I'm glad that you guys brought samples back, and I'm sure that I can echo the majority of other people that, it's nice to have, you don't want to shop while you're hangry. Like, that's not fun for anybody.
You can always make a meal out of it. And that's we do a lot of social listening and then enact strategies that come through that. Making a meal out of doing the samples is a trend that is hopefully really close to coming back. And then we also have seen a lot of passion for our cafe items. Another good example is date night, especially during COVID. Like, mom and dad are just dying to get out of the house, and so a trip to Sam's Club to go and do some shopping, get a pizza pretzel, look around, really resonated as a theme for our members on social. And it's something that we've tried to play up as well.
It's efficiency at its finest too.
Yeah.
You can shop and eat at the same
Yeah.
time. Shifting gears, knowing just like for time's sake, we talked a lot about the monetary value based from a marketing perspective versus brand value messaging and CSR, where there's a delicate balance between the two, and where have you found success? Because you have mentioned a few times, obviously, about like listening to your suppliers, to the associates, as well as to the customers, and that social listening is very important. But when you're actually speaking to those potential new members or current members, where are you finding the right balance?
Yeah, I think, having my experience and then moving from focus on members and driving sales and then focused on brand metrics, it has been a mental shift for me. When I talked about that Merchant Hero program, the objective is not to drive sales. The objective is to shift the quality perception. And so we're measuring that with Brand Lift. We're measuring it through our NPS scores at a macro level, and then linking that business case to those business metrics to these brand health metrics. When I think about CSR, I kind of think about the concept of delicate balance in a little bit different way. It's not just how do you balance CSR marketing with the rest of your marketing. It's really balancing your actions with your words. And as I mentioned, we've been doing these focus groups, and we've heard from our members really clearly that the action is what is important to them. So we've worked very closely with Walmart as an enterprise and what the overall company is doing to advance racial equity, and then also how we can carve out a space that's specific to Sam's Club within that as well.
Are there any, you just mentioned the racial equality, and I know that you had mentioned also watching the Sam's Pride event that happened the other day. What additional efforts are also being taken across either Walmart or Sam's as an org that you feel passionately about, or that you feel like I'm proud to be working for this organization?
Yeah, like I said, there's sort of this like banner, here's where we are as an enterprise that makes me so proud to work for this organization, because as we saw last year, there were so many companies that came out and posted a black square or vocalized words of support, which is in and of itself a big step for a lot of brands. It is putting them in an uncomfortable position and pushing them to think about things differently. But at Walmart, we came out and said, hey, we're pledging $100 million to build this racial equity systems. So we really put our money where our mouth was. From a Sam's perspective, we have what we call Sam's Club 7, which is a group focused on 7 core initiatives across education. Oh gosh, no, I'm not going to be able to remember them all, but across education, criminal justice reform, and other factors that affect minorities and actually impacting change across the country, not only within our business.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that, when you guys are taking these polls from the members and the customers that are shopping, and social listening of what matters, and knowing that the brand is actually taking action, it makes you feel good to get up and go to work in the morning.
Absolutely.
Kind of shifting gears again. So we talked a little bit about localization and personalization, and how media tactics, that's becoming a little bit more increasingly important. And you had mentioned the social components that Sam's has been working with. Can you dive a little bit into that thought process for Sam and, the My Local Social program that you guys are running, and how Sam's is taking those efforts to become part of the community as well?
Yeah, so I'm on a team that is what we like to call kind of a Venn diagram of brand and social. So we sort of meet in the middle in terms of where our brand comes to life on the social side. And so I really can't take any credit for this, but I can brag on my team. They have stood up these My Local Social Facebook pages, and I think we've had an incredible adoption rate. Almost all clubs have started participating just in, I think, about the last 6 months since we launched them. And then it's really been a great opportunity, I think, to do 2 things on the social side. One is really make that club a part of the community. You see a lot of passion for this person who is the greeter, or this person who is the meat cutter, and you see a lot of loyalty for the individual who is serving you, and it helps to, again, humanize the brand and put people at the center of what we're doing. But then it's also been a really good way to drive excitement for what's going on in the club, whether that's like a super cool pool float that our associates are excited about, and then we see a ton of traffic to the clubs and it sells out, or even just letting people know when high demand items are in stock, like a seasonal produce item.
That's great. Yeah. So, when things are ready to be bought, 4th of July is here. So I'm like, where
exactly.
do I understand what's happening?
Highly recommend the cake with the berries on top. It's really good.
I'm taking notes in general, so I'm putting that down. And then finally, this is a blanketed general question. It really doesn't have anything to do with Sam's Club, Walmart, or Nextdoor, to be honest. But what other retail brands do you admire for their marketing tactics, or who do you think is doing it right at this moment or in the past?
Yeah, I think it goes back to putting people at the center of the brand and putting that humanity at the center of the brand. If you asked anyone on our team, there's a couple that are on our short list. We all really love Sephora. I think their campaign, We Belong to Something Beautiful, is fantastic. After we talked yesterday and I mentioned them, I saw a video late last night that was from a deaf makeup artist. And even though makeup videos typically don't even really include a lot of talking, I thought it was fantastic to show someone signing and educating about applying makeup at the same time. Nike is another one that's just top of the line in terms of their brand marketing and making it really, really clear what they stand for. I also love Lush Cosmetics. They did this whole series on natural hair journeys, which I think was an awesome opportunity to educate a broader audience and to demonstrate for them that they had a line of hair care products that aligned with their customers' needs. So all of those, again, have in common this lens of humanity that tells a larger story and helps educate the consumer. And I think finding that sweet spot of what your brand stands for and who you are and who the people are that make up your brand and what you can provide to a consumer is just a really special place to be.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what you just said, because I always say that people are coming and neighbors are coming to Nextdoor for the utility and staying for that community, staying for that reason of why that they're there. And all these brands and examples that you gave also had content tied into them, right? So the Sephora, you had that Something Beautiful, Lush Cosmetics with the Journey. It's all about providing that actual tangible content and how that brand is allowing you to have that journey, which is pretty unique. I love it. So the last question that I have, so what is your favorite product at Sam's? This is a spitball because this is not prepared.
Ooh, okay. Changes seasonally. So my favorite product, but maybe my favorite product like evergreen all the time, is our flowers. They're awesome. Like, and I think it just feels like such a treat to just like bring yourself home a little bouquet of flowers when you're out shopping. And I think our floral merchant has done an incredible job of sourcing things and then pricing them right. Like you can get a huge, gorgeous bouquet for under $15. And they have a 7-day guarantee. So you know it's going to last for a long time. And I pretty much every time I go to Sam's, I'm like, I kind of want some flowers, and so I'm like making an excuse of what other things I have to buy at Sam's so that I can treat myself to a bouquet of flowers.
I mean, and when they last for 7 days, I feel like that is a reason enough. You get the samples and the flowers, and you're pretty much set for the entire week for everything.
Take yourself on a date night. Go sampling, pick up a bouquet of flowers, a nice bottle of wine if you're so inclined, and you're good to go.
I love it. Well, Natalie, this has been a pleasure. I know that Sam's and Nextdoor has worked together in the past, and I hope that everyone kind of got a really great view into your journey at Sam's. And the one thing the biggest takeaway that I've had from today is that the people being at the center, and even your own career journey, it sounds like taking all of the knowledge that you have, but you continue learning, coming in from the agency side, having that knowledge, but then being like, okay, it's actually different from what you thought it would be moving forward. And, Sam's Club, I feel like this year in particular has taken really large steps when it comes to meeting the members where they are, making sure they're keeping associates safe, and innovating as a brand. So I'm excited to see what you guys have coming up through the rest of 2021 and 2022.
I'm excited for you to see it. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of that flexibility and that learning mindset. I think that's been one of the things that's really carried us through the last year, is the ability to adapt and to continue innovating and serve our members. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm Ryan Culp. I'm one of the members here at Brand Innovators. We're just a little bit ahead of schedule, and we're just trying to rope in our next two attendees for our next session. But just wanted to let you know to sit tight, don't go anywhere. We have some great content coming up here in just a few moments. So if you could hang tight, maybe grab a cup of coffee, glass of water, maybe fire off an email or two, and we'll have some awesome content coming at you in just a few moments. So stay tuned.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're ready to kick off the next session, waiting on one of the speakers. So I will introduce Lauren Trainin, the account executive at ATB Cable Sales with Cadent. Welcome, Lauren. Just giving them a moment. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for bearing with me. I was having a little bit of a technical difficulty there.
Oh, no worries. What is a Brand Innovators Summit without a little bit of technical difficulties?
It's the world we live in now.
Exactly. So how are you today? Where are you based?
I am in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Sunny and lovely. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm in Colorado, so it's also pretty lovely. Is it very hot by you?
We went through a little bit of a heat wave, but it's kind of settled down now. I feel like people who are calling in, maybe from the eastern regions, are probably like, all right, that's enough. We don't want to hear about the nice LA weather, but it's been pretty pleasant. Yeah, not too hot. Getting ready for summer.
Awesome. Well, as we're waiting for Melinda, I would love to kick it off and have you share with the audience a little bit about Cadent and about yourself. So let's start there.
Sure. So my, career path, I started at Viacom, really grew up there, was there for about 7 years. So started in traditional TV. I then spent a few years at ScreenVision, which is cinema advertising, so still in the video realm. And I've been at Cadent now for, I might be going on, this month, 5 years. So Cadent is an advanced TV company. We have a number of platforms to really take marketers down that funnel. So, starts with our broad reach platform, which is national cable and national broadcast. Moving down a little bit further, we have indexed TV. Data-driven linear is another common term for it. So using data to help find the marketer's audience. So the right networks, the right day parts, the right programs. And then you take it a step further, and we also have addressable capabilities, which is really that one-to-one household level messaging, both through set-top box data, and last but not least, OTT. So, we have a lot to offer. It's a very broad offering, but it's really nice. It has kind of a consultative element to it. So depending on what a marketer is looking to do, we can really use a combination of our different platforms to help them.
Definitely a lot to offer as I see Cadent regularly, immerse into the Brand Innovators community and a ton of timely topics. So it's interesting. I also started my career at now Viacom CBS. So looks like all the greats are starting there.
Yeah, we've got a shared background there.
So, I know we're still waiting on Melinda. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about, your own role and what you do, day to day at Kadent.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, let me just change this screen view. Our company's really gone through an evolution in terms of really merging the teams and streamlining the offering, because I think what we're seeing from marketers, we used to live in a very siloed world, TV, digital, OTT, and I think we're seeing, those worlds come together. So at Kadent, we are really taking this kind of multifaceted, multi-platform approach. So really my day-to-day kind of spans both the traditional linear, which really is my foundation, my base, what I grew up doing, but we'll get into it on this call with Melinda, but without a doubt, data is the central focus of marketing conversations now. So, we're really excited to have a sales force that's not only well-versed in that broad reach vehicle, which is linear TV, but being able to bring data into the conversation. So like I said, my day-to-day really kind of spans a lot of different types of conversations. And like I said, trying to think consultatively and really, pick and choose which strategy we think is best for our partners. So it's definitely an exciting time to be at Kadent. We've grown tremendously over the last, 6-7 years. To think that our capabilities are this broad now is really an exciting time for us.
It really is a truly exciting time, and data is such a great topic. I'm sure that you have run into a ton of success stories over the past year, especially around, data and insights and listening to your consumers. What do you think has been the biggest learning coming out of the pandemic around that data conversation?
I think as we were going through it, we thought, listen, some marketers were hit a little harder than others. So different industries maybe pulled back during the pandemic or actually increased. And we were kind of curious to see, what does this mean for data? Are they going to lean more on it? Is this still an area where we're going to see growth? And I think we were really pleasantly surprised to see that that was the case. That part of our business, those data-driven efforts have grown tremendously. And I think, I can only speak from the viewpoint of Kadent, but I think really the takeaway there is that that is the direction in which the industry is moving. I think obviously data is here to stay. It's just a matter of how are people using it? How are they determining the right times to use it? At what point in their customer's journey is it a good time to implement it? So, I think, like I said, we were really pleased to see that there was still that forge forward and wanting to use data, even with the challenges of the pandemic.
It's such a great learning, and I'm excited to see, how all of our community continues to use data and continues to foster these conversations, because it's so important. I do realize that Melinda is hopping on soon, so we should be joined by her presence in a moment. But thank you for, doing a little bit of improv. I know this was not prepared, but we're so grateful to have you on the stage, and we're really looking forward to this chat with Melinda V. Johnson, the Director of Marketing for Hair at Henkel. So please get ready to welcome her on. We're still waiting. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
This usually does not.
Difficult to coordinate, right? There's a lot of different moving pieces.
Exactly. So let's continue with this conversation. What do you use with data that may or may not be helpful for companies in the long run?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. I'm getting some questions for the audience. So let me see if I can decipher this as well. how do you use this data that comes in? How do you use the data? And what do you think might be helpful for companies in the long run?
Got it. Well, at Kadant, I guess we can kind of think about it, two different data sets. So companies have their own first party data that sometimes they want to transact on. And then separately, there's third party data. So Kadant really takes this data agnostic approach. We will work with those who want to ingest their first party data in a privacy compliant manner. And then additionally, we really work with all of the data partners out there to help find a marketer's specific audience segment. In terms of, how we're using it, we can apply it to traditional linear, which is broad scale, but still targeted within that. So isolating networks and day parts, and then again, moving it a step further, household addressable and OTT, where you can really pinpoint where your target audience is and deliver that ad specifically to their household, to their devices, be it their tablet, smart TV, the list goes on. So I think, again, depending on what an advertiser's KPI is, are they looking for sales lift? Are they looking for web engagement? Are they looking for health? There's a variety of ways to use that data and to find the right platform to deliver that messaging on. And I don't know if that fully answered the question, but hopefully I touched on some of it. The data conversation is so expansive. You can go in so many different directions with it.
I totally agree. I mean, you're sharing so many great insights for our community. And as we wait for Melinda, I want to pivot the conversation because today's summit is the future of women in retail marketing. So we're really focused on women. I would love if you could share, your own personal journey and how you got involved into this field and anything that you can share with any younger members that might be on the call.
Sure. If I'm being honest, I fell into advertising sales and it was a great career to fall into. Like I said, I really grew up at Viacom on the Nickelodeon Kids and Family team. And, I guess kind of keeping with this women's theme, I definitely had some very influential women role models during my career. Thankfully, I had one in particular that really took me under her wing and helped me navigate not only the media landscape, but just being a business professional. And, now being further in my career, I really look back on that mentorship and we're still friends to this day. And I see how much it really, truly shaped, my career path. So I'm very grateful for that. She's on. But as far as advice, I would say people really should actively seek out mentorship. They should expand their network, connect with people. I think that's a really important part of what we do.
That's a great note to leave on. And thank you so much for sharing. I'm thrilled, Melinda, you're here. And welcome to the stage, everyone. This is Melinda V. Johnson. She's the Director of Marketing for Hair at Henkel. She's an incredible leader. And again, I'm thrilled to have her on the stage. So welcome, Melinda.
Hi, Ariel and Lauren. Thank you for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever anybody is. It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you made it on. How are you, Melinda?
Yes, I'm doing well today, Lauren. Thank you for asking. It's a busy Tuesday.
Oh,
my aunt is here. Okay, my aunt Sheila from Atlanta is watching me. She sent a note. Hey, Aunt Sheila.
Love the support.
I do too. I tell you, family's everything.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit and chat with me today. I know all of our tuned in listeners are very excited to hear from you with your very impressive career across numerous CPG companies. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, could you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how it led to your current role at Henkel?
Absolutely. Well, it has definitely not been a linear path. I have actually been in marketing for about 15 years. And I actually started my career, well, it's not that surprisingly. There's a lot of engineers in marketing, but I actually started my career as an engineer selling chemicals for a paper and chemical company. And I decided to go back and get my MBA, and that's when I transitioned into brand management. And since then, I've been working at a variety of companies in the beauty industry, in CPG. So my longest tenure has been at Procter & Gamble, where I started my career. And I was there for 9 years, and I worked across multiple brands. Some they still own, some they don't today. But I worked as a, in market leading like the regional business. I've worked in upstream innovation. I've done some stints on shopper marketing. And then I'm most recently coming from L'Oreal, where I was at L'Oreal for about 5 years, leading one of the multicultural business portfolios, a brand called Dark and Lovely. That's part of a bigger group of brands under Soft Sheen Carson. So a very historic brand targeted towards African-American women and men. And then I was supporting the Target team leading shopper marketing for the L'Oreal Paris brand. And so I've been at Hinkle for about 3 months. It feels longer, but it's been a great transition for me. So I was coming from the shopper marketing landscape, which was very exciting and unique to be in, during when the pandemic hit. And now I've moved back to managing a brand and owning the P&L and running the day-to-day US business for their hair care business. So Hinkle has 2 major brands. One's called Schwarzkopf, which is primarily a hair color brand. And then the second brand is called Got2b, which is a hair styling and hair care and hair color, business. But what's been exciting for me to kind of make the transition is throughout my kind of marketing career, in addition to kind of gaining skills and understanding how brands and consumers and businesses work and what we need to do to drive ultimately sales and profit, I've always, primarily because I'm a woman of color, I've always been the one working on the multicultural aspect. So even from my earlier days, whether it was, we think this hair color brand will work well for a Hispanic target, or most recently when I was actually leading a business that was specifically targeted to African-American men and women, I've always kind of been that person kind of helping to champion and making sure we're reaching a diverse target. So that was very important to me when I moved to my current role, which I'm at now. And I think it's, really at an interesting intersection that I can take my experiences and my passion for making sure that I'm working on a brand that is purpose-filled and that is trying to attract and recruit and really, serve diverse populations, and making sure that I'm bringing that to a brand, even though the brands I work on aren't necessarily multicultural or specifically, they're really made for everybody, but bringing that lens to the business. So that was important to me. And that's what's brought me here today.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. That actually kind of teased me up for where I wanted to take this conversation initially.
Yeah.
Obviously, I did a little bit of research about you prior to us hopping on this call. So not only did I notice your very impressive CPG career, but there was a little blurb in your LinkedIn about section that really caught my eye. And I hope you don't mind if I read a little section from it.
Not at all.
Okay. So you asked the question, how can we grow during times like this? The answer lies in identifying and genuinely speaking to the needs of diverse multicultural populations, the greatest untapped engine of growth available to most companies today. So Melinda, with that in mind, what is your perspective on how multicultural marketing has changed in the last few years, and what impact are you seeing from a business standpoint?
Absolutely. So no, that's a really pivotal line that I updated my LinkedIn profile with last year. Given all of the, I guess I'd call it like societal focus that came about with the murder of George Floyd, around making sure that as a society we were being diverse and inclusive. But then when you think about businesses and companies and brands, it was really eye-opening because it was a huge pivot and opened everybody's eyes up to kind of a bigger consideration that I think when you're working as a woman of color and a Black woman, we're about 10% of the population. So the majority of people that you work with on a day-to-day basis don't necessarily look like you. But it was that raised consciousness that kind of changed things. And as when you ask the question, how have things changed? Like I talked about in the beginning, years ago, it was if you had a specific product that was geared toward a segment or a kind of underrepresented minority segment, you might have a person working on that, or if you in your research and your business analysis discovered, oh, I have a group of people who are using my product, I need to speak to them better. So you might develop a different piece of communication, but it wasn't really integrated throughout like the business or brand DNA. And then over time that changed. So it definitely, you started to have more consciousness of it. People couldn't move away when you look at the numbers of Hispanic and African-American buying power, over $1 billion, as a business that's not for profit, that's trying to make money, you look at that and go, okay, clearly the demographics are changing. I need to make sure that my products and my communication are being inclusive. But it really, things leapfrogged with this past year. And so I think the biggest change I'm seeing is that, one, everybody is talking about it and educating themselves, which I think has been really great. But two, there's a lot of changes in consciousness to make sure that it's not an add-on, that it's not a separate, oh, I have a different plan that's just multicultural. I do see businesses and brands and, counterparts in the industry really trying to make sure that it's integrated into the business's DNA and that it's thought of, at all levels, for whether that's, internal to when you're developing new products and testing things, all the way throughout the supply chain of bringing something to market and bringing a communication to market. There's considerations and people are thinking and talking about it. So, I'll give an internal example because I actually did a lot of work this past year when I was at L'Oreal and even now continuing at Hinkle and making sure that organizationally we were being very diverse. But there's an interesting thing that specifically is brand new in Hinkle, that as we're this term unconscious bias, everybody went through unconscious bias training to make sure that we were all, putting all of our inherent, and everybody has them, biases aside when you're evaluating people or looking to hire talent. But most recently at Hinkle, we are now requiring that there be a person of color on every interviewing panel to make sure that there is representation, to make sure that someone with a different perspective is looking at internal talent, with a different lens, and that it's not all, a homogeneous group, which I think is great. And, people have differing opinions on it. Because, when you are underrepresented, then the spotlight gets on you. So, of course, I'll probably be asked to be on a lot of things because I'm a person of color, but people have differing opinions. It doesn't bother me because I know that it's for progress. And, sometimes you have to sacrifice or have to expose yourself or have to be, you have to sacrifice for the greater good. But I think it's just one example, and there's many more.
Yeah, no, that's
but I think it's I think it's a great question. But yeah, there's so much has changed, and what's great is I see it continuing, which is awesome.
That is very encouraging to hear. I'm sure the proliferation of data has contributed to kind of identifying these audiences, maybe places where you want to be. And I think you'd even mentioned, there's maybe different messaging we want to send to certain audiences. So, to get into the conversation of data, which everybody loves, I'd love to get a sense from you, what data are you using it? How are you using it? Particularly as, the consumer goes through their journey.
Absolutely. So like probably multiple industries with COVID brought this proliferation. And digital was already a big deal, so don't get me wrong, it's not new, but what it did was really it pushed a lot of people who maybe it wasn't at the top of their list, or they weren't kind of engaging in digital commerce and digital platforms in a meaningful way. When the world kind of shut down, everybody was forced to. So a lot of what I work on now, and especially because I combine that with the brands that I work on, like, and in particular, the Got2b brand I worked on is actually targeting a Gen Z target. So our media plans are pretty much 100% social, 100% digital, and online videos. So the data the data that I'm always looking at, and I would say this is probably true of anybody like in CPG, we're always looking at our return on spend. So whether that's from a actual like paid perspective, looking at like return on ad spend, or looking at the ROI of like everything in our marketing mix, that's usually the number one metric you look at. But then, to dig deeper, you're also wanting to look, especially as you think about social, like what do our engagement levels look like? What do things like, and depending on the type of vendor you're working with, what does the consideration look like, which is the precursor to whether somebody actually buys something. One of the things though I like to dig into when I'm working on brands, or looking at what other competitive brands are doing, or looking what's going on in the market, is I'm a comment reader. So and especially when you're targeting like a Gen Z brand, you really have to dig into social listening and the comments, and really kind of suss out. It's kind of like the new age way of doing focus groups. So instead of like pulling people in a room and talking to them and getting like verbatims, your verbatims are your comments. So I look at comments a lot, and while it's not quantitative, what's great is it can give you a precursor to something that either maybe there's an issue, or maybe there's something that's good that you hadn't thought of, or someone's using your product in a new way. I can't tell you how many clips I get from different team members, showcasing how a new way someone is using hairspray, whether that's to like smooth down your eyebrows, or I had an article the other day about women using bar soap with a toothbrush instead of gel to smooth down their eyebrows. Like, just so many different, tips and tricks that you get comments on. And then I think too, from a social listening perspective, it's important to kind of keep your ear to the ground on what's going on with your brand, and, what things come up. So I'll give an example that, luckily it didn't really have like a bad impact on the Got2b business, but there was a few months ago, there was a woman who had used, instead of using her Got2b gel and blasting freeze spray, she'd run out and she used Gorilla Glue. And so she's known as the Gorilla Glue girl. And so while the issue didn't happen with our product was all in the press, because that's what she ran out of, what she normally would have used. So, when that hit, it was okay. So it's not quantitative data, but we were able to make sure we reached out to her, make sure that we didn't get any bad publicity, she's now actually started her own hair care line, but, making sure that like we're, keeping up with what's going on with our products and how people are using them. So it's a qualitative piece of data, but very important, to stay on the trends and stay on what's happening, not only with your own brand, but to just benchmark and see what others are doing. But, and the other great thing about data is there's so much of it, the tactics that we're using are constantly changing. So, I think it's really, I feel like I'm always learning. You're always getting a new report. You're always getting new information about your business that you can kind of leverage to inform your future strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kind of in the topic of evolution and change, how would you say D2C companies have changed what was a pretty traditional CPG landscape?
Yeah, that's that's significantly. They've changed it. They've changed it significantly. And I'll speak for beauty, but I think it's probably applicable for other things. I primarily worked on traditional, like established brands that, you know, over the years have then established an e-commerce presence and have either, you know, some of the brands have maybe dabbled in creating their own D2C brands, or, you know, everybody is, you know, trying to figure out how they can win with Amazon and some of the big brick and click e-retailers. And then what you've had in beauty over the past several years, but I think it's just most recently, it's just proliferated the market. And it's wonderful because it's created even more competition and forced everybody to do better, is you have creators who are creating their own small brands from a need that they felt wasn't being met in the marketplace. And what's been great about kind of this being digitally native is that you can come up with an idea, you can create a product to serve your, you know, serve a need that hasn't been met. You can, you know, develop it, create it, whether it's in your kitchen or wherever you start at how to make your product, and you can literally launch it online and start to sell it. And, you know, this has been happening for many, many years, but as of late, you have more and more products like this, innovative products that are coming to market, you know, outside of these big companies with huge R&D facilities. And so what I think is really cool is it's tapped into this consumer desire to, you know, really have things that are personalized and that are individually made for you. And because these D2C businesses are very digitally native, they are very averse of how to drive their business online, how to engage with their consumer, how to take, you know, that feedback and constantly innovate. And they're not afraid, because they're entrepreneurs, they're not afraid to take risks. And, you know, like anything you start and do, you're not going to, you know, you're going to have some stumbles, you're going to fall, but you get back up and you quickly get back up and keep it moving. And so I think this business model has, you know, it basically has created this set of niche brands that are doing very well. And what the trends you start to see now are, you see these bigger brands looking at these D2C brands going, this is a business model that's working. And we need to figure out how to bring some of those learnings into the way we operate, into our business model. So it's this interesting phenomenon in talking to different people in the industry, in that the bigger brands are trying to figure out how they can be like the D2C niche brands. The retailers, while big brands usually come with big budgets and advertising dollars, and so they will always be a piece of the retail landscape. The retailers themselves, these small brands, are darlings because people want them, they desire them, they're cool. They don't have to play by the rules. And so you have retailers that are now rushing to stock their shelves with these smaller players. So it's this really inverse phenomenon, is that the big guys are trying to be more like the small guys in the way they communicate to consumers and engage. And the small guys are now highly courted by retailers, and are trying to figure out how to scale up and trying to figure out how to be like the big guys in terms of scaling. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think you're going to continue to see kind of the blurring of lines, especially because we're just in this kind of physical and digital world colliding together. So I think that the big companies are learning quite a bit from small brands. They're buying D2Cs. So, you know, if you can make your brand successful enough, somebody will buy it and you become super rich. Maybe one day I'll be I'll be in that league. I do have entrepreneurial aspirations. I just don't know what field yet, but.
Well, you've got the blueprint. You have the perfect background to get it going.
Yes. I just need to take a break and stop and think about it. But yeah.
No breaks. Zoom call.
No breaks. Yes. But no, it's just an interesting phenomenon. So I love it because, you know, eventually with the blurring, I'm not going to say everything's going to become equal, but they'll move closer together.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Thank you. I'm going to shift it a little bit and go to the kind of the theme of this brand innovators, which is women in retail marketing. So we'd be remiss not to talk about retail marketing for women in a discussion about women in retail marketing. So what do you think are the biggest challenges for CPG and beauty brands whose primary audience is women? And what are some ways the industry is tackling those issues?
Yeah, so It's interesting, and I think it will probably vary by industry. I will say in the beauty industry, you tend to have more women, which is a great thing. Unlike some other industries that I'm sure, like especially in the tech industry where it's been dominated by men. So when I think about CPG and I think about beauty in particular, but I think it's applicable to everybody, the first thing I would say is CPG companies and brands have to stop and listen. Like listen, that's like step one. And I think when you're in a big machine and you're going, you hear you hear feedback, you hear trends. You have women employees, you have women consumers. But I think in this day and age with so many things changing around us and frankly, women having more buying power, there's, larger, slightly larger in size, they're more prevalent, they're working, they're waiting till they're a little bit older to establish families. I think it's important, one, for brands to listen and to really understand the kind of just the same way you would do with a business or a brand. You stop and you listen to your consumer and understand what their needs are. I think CPG companies need to do that not only with consumers, but also with their organizations. And I'm a firm believer that an organization needs to reflect the community it serves. So if your primary consumers, this is a perfect example for beauty. If your primary consumer are women and you don't have that same representation within your organization, you're mismatched. And the same goes for any other kind of diverse group. Like you need to be representing the community you serve. So that's step one. And then from a beauty lens, I think it's really important that companies remember that the communications that we put out, the messages that we put out are going to define how women in society think about themselves, and especially from a beauty perspective. What we put out there is what people see, what people aspire to. And while, as a grown adult, you like to think that, okay, I know who I am. I'm, I'm confident in myself. Everybody is influenced by images you see. And so I think it's a huge responsibility for the companies that are putting out the communication messages to be cognizant of that and to make sure that, they're being thoughtful in the communication, making sure it's grounded in authenticity and truth. Because it impacts women and it impacts the younger generation. So, when you see kind of great purpose-led campaigns that are empowering women, that are, I think I was just looking at like a recent Nike campaign, especially as we're coming into like the Olympics and how they really showcase women in sports. Like it's just great because small, little girls look at that and go, I can do that, And I think we think about brands, even as to whatever category, even something just small and that you don't even think is a big deal, everything has an impact in the communication we see. And what's great about the industry is you're starting to see people really take that to heart. You see, what I love from a beauty perspective is we're moving away from this idealistic perfection. There used to be a day back in the day, if you're doing a hair advertising spot, the hair had to be long and flowy. There was always a scene where it would blow back in the wind. And like, it was just the iconic like hair blow shot. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to see that because first of all, no, people aren't walking through a wind machine like that. And if you are, your hair is not perfectly like flowing in the air and coming back. So I love that we're moving away from these, standards of perfection that aren't achievable and that aren't realistic. And that you see, different brands starting to portray more, be authentic in that piece. And I think that's super important for women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As a viewer and a consumer of media myself, I definitely see that shift in messaging. And I think companies will really see the benefit from it.
Agreed.
I'm going to go to the Q&A because I think we only have about 5 more minutes. So here's a question. We know offline marketing drives online engagement. Given this, what would you say are the biggest challenges in offline marketing efficiency? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go no, go ahead, Lauren.
I wonder if this question is also kind of about that relationship between, that broad reach, which, national
Yes.
marketing that drives to that digital engagement, like the balance.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. So I'll kind of answer that broadly and then kind of narrow in. The question asker is absolutely right. And I think one of the things that you've seen over the past few years and with this emergence of everything being omni-channel is you want to, we, as marketers, we want to make sure that we're having the same consistent, oh, good, we have more time. We're having the same consistent communication throughout the consumer's journey. So whether they're, watching something on their iPad or, I live in the New York City area. If you're, on a subway looking at the subway advertising or outdoor advertising, that it's consistent to when you go into the store and see the product, to when you're on social media and seeing someone talk about the product. There's that consistent thread. So from an offline perspective, one of the big things you use offline communication for is to drive that broader awareness and whatever those key messages that you're trying to get across. But what you want to do is make sure that does connect to what is seen online. So when you go online, is your product, is your PDP, is it clear what the product's about? Does the imagery look consistent and the messaging consistent with what I saw, to drive that broader awareness? And I think as marketers, it's really easy to get caught up in storytelling, which we all want to have great storytelling. It's super critical in this day and age because you have to have that emotional connection to people. But it's very easy to get caught up in the storytelling, especially when you're talking online videos and TV and things that drive that broad awareness. And then you get to the online environment and, that great thing that brought you in that was sizzly and exciting, where is that online? So one example that it's the Perennial campaign that I love. I mean, what I enjoyed as a consumer, but the Geico campaigns, 15 minutes or more can save you 15%, zaniest ads. But the messaging is always the same, it's always that same, 15 minutes can save you 15%. It's been that way for years. And as crazy as the, whatever scenario they have, whatever nostalgia they pull from, and they have some really great writers. I love it. It's always consistent. So when you go online to do your research, you're seeing that messaging. And I think that's key. Don't let the storytelling get lost. And that's something, marketers have to keep it in check because we love a good story, but you have to make sure that your online communication is consistent, but then it's also helping to drive the conversion. So it's got a different purpose in that sense.
Right. Okay. Same listener has a follow-up question. Would you recommend use of QR codes in print to increase engagement?
I would say as of 2021, yes. So I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, QR codes kind of died. You needed when they first came out, you had to have a special reader, and so again, digital was prolific with a younger consumer, but everybody wasn't necessarily on their phones all the time, and it might be certain demographics. And I would say COVID, because we couldn't physically interact with people, QR codes made a huge comeback. And now I see them on everything. I mean, when we were in quarantine and things opened back up, but you couldn't really still, you had to distance. I remember going to restaurants and everything, you couldn't get a menu. You just scan the little QR code and your menu popped up. And, here's my phone, technology. I have 2 phones sitting beside me. Technology is great. I mean, I've been through every iteration of my iPhone. And yeah, there was the time you had to have an app. Now you don't have to have an app. You just scan it over the QR code. So I think convenience has made things better. Again, changed consumer behavior has made people more comfortable scanning their phone over a QR code. Because again, in the beginning of all this, you were like, well, is someone going to like download something on my phone or spy on me? Or, there was probably a lot more skepticism, whereas people are much more comfortable operating in a digital sphere. So I would say yes. And then, and then print is interesting. I mean, print's one of those pieces of the mix that, is still there. It's changing because a lot of the print publications are becoming more digital. But, we're seeing QR codes in store quite a bit on anything you can get it on to kind of drive to something that's additional education or information, or, there's really cool technology from companies out there that are like, you scan the QR code and augmented reality will come up and you can engage in a brand in a virtual environment. So there's lots of cool ways you can use QR codes. So they're back.
That might be a trend that sticks around.
They're back. Yeah, they're back. They're back.
And to the rest of our listeners, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A session or Q&A box. We have about 10 minutes left, and I'm happy to read those off. But Melinda, I'd also like to know, as a female in a leadership role, I'd be curious to know how mentorship has impacted your career. Is it something you sought out? Were there people along the way that kind of took you under their wing? We'd love to get some advice from you on that front.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you raised that as a question. So I've definitely had people who've helped me along my career, but I will tell you, and I think a lot of it just comes honestly from, I would have to say, just being a Black woman kind of growing up in corporate America where there's not a lot of people who look like you. I honestly didn't seek out mentorship until, I would say in the past few years in a meaningful way. I always kind of, and this is kind of more my guidance to those who are listening and to those who, how important having mentors and people to guide you is, seek them early, and engage early. And I really didn't. I really just kind of worked hard and thought that, okay, I'll just work hard and that's how I'll do well. And I definitely had people who played a kind of a mentor role for me, for sure, whether formal or informal. But I didn't realize how important it was, I would say, until maybe the past 5 to 7 years. So not like at the beginning of my career. And I would say what I love, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I have a lot of people reaching out to me, whether they're alumni, or whoever, like wanting to either chat or get advice and network. And again, because everything has become digital, I think, networking and reaching out and having a mentor has become so much easier to do. And I think those who can kind of get past the barrier of it feeling uncomfortable to do that are going to put themselves in a great place. Because for the most part, I mean, and you realize this as you get older, but people are people. And, either they're going to respond to you or not. What's the worst that can happen is they say no. And so those who can kind of push past that, I think, are going to really set themselves up for success. So, and I think, have mentors that are like you so that you can, you have a commonality, but also definitely go, seek the advice of people who are not like you. And for me, I've recently been trying to find, been engaging people who are doing maybe something that I'm interested in, but I'm not quite there yet, to kind of expand my horizons and my thinking, and just kind of gain knowledge. So I'm a big fan of always learning.
I think that's such a great point. I think curiosity is really key to growth. And I also agree with your sentiment of, I wish also when I was younger, a little bit bolder and willing to reach out to people. I think what you don't realize that, people are really open to wanting to help and share their experience, and they like talking about their stuff. So I would really encourage people similar to you, Melinda, to do that sooner rather than later.
I think we have, it looks like we have some questions.
Yeah.
I'm a multitasker, so I'm looking at the chat.
If
If you guys had see me at work, I'm always the person chatting and throwing in GIFs in meetings.
So one question that's come in, how do your e-commerce and in-store audience and strategies differ?
Yes. So the biggest difference is where they're at in their kind of a little older term, but where they're at in their path to purchase. But even the path is not linear anymore. So it's really about situationally, if you're in store, you're in a different mindset. As you're probably, depending on who you are, you might be browsing, you might be trying to buy something on replenishment, but you're in the store, you're there for a reason, and you're in a different mindset. Whereas when you're online, and I don't know how other people are, but I like my nighttime, I'm online looking at all sorts of things to buy online, just kind of perusing. Yes. So you're in a different environment. So the strategy of how you communicate and connect, and it could be the same person, like who I am when I'm, surfing Amazon late at night, looking at random things, or who I am, running down the street to the Walmart or the Target or the Walgreens I'm the same person, but my mindset is different. So the engagement strategy has to be different. The communication has to be different. To one, when I'm online, excite me about it, get me to engage or to learn more, versus in the store where ultimately you want me to buy it. So what is going to get me to close that deal? And that's where the omni piece comes in, and that you want it to be connected so that they're doing different things, but the message is consistent. Right. That's the biggest one.
And then as a follow-up to that, how do you promote authenticity within your purpose-driven marketing strategies?
The number one thing is to make sure your strategy is built on a truthful insight that is relevant for your consumer base, and one that you or your company can really own and really believe and can own it over a long period of time. That's the biggest way. Authenticity is this term that everybody loves to throw. I mean, it's used everywhere. But the key to being authentic, and this is in business and in life, is really consistency. If you're about something, or you want to stand for something, or you have a value, you need to uphold it consistently for a long time and all the time. Even when it's hard, that's the piece. Even when it's hard, you have to stand on that. And I think ultimately what we're seeing, you see it in life, you see it in business, and that if you do that, the reward will come. And that's not to say the backlash won't come. We're in 2021. You can't post something without somebody having a backlash or a negative opinion on it. But if it's built on an insight and you're believe in it, and you can say it truthfully, without choking on your words, then run with it.
Yep, absolutely. And then I think what we'll close on here is, what do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce, and what is the biggest opportunity?
The biggest challenge and opportunity. I would say the biggest challenge is, from my perspective, the unknown, because we hit a time, I think, in the past 18 months where everybody went in planning for something and it completely got tilted on its head. So I think as you think about retail marketing and being, marketing online or offline, the unknown is a big piece. I mean, there's so much change and it's happening very quickly. Keeping up with it and being able to be nimble is the biggest challenge. And then on the flip side, I think it's also the opportunity, frankly. Like, I think in a competitive marketplace, that's kind of what makes it fun, is that you have things changing, you have pivots, consumers are always changing. And as we've seen, our landscapes are changing, and those who are out front, kind of at the forefront of the change, they're absorbing some of the risk, but the reward is great. So I think it's kind of a double-edged thing there.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk, sit and chat with me today, share with our listeners. You are certainly a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much.
Melinda and Lauren, thank you both so much for that insightful discussion. Melinda, you definitely made your Aunt Sheila proud. So
I know I'm gonna have to hit her up after this.
yes, definitely. Well, I'm Claire Vandenberg. I'm going to be emceeing the rest of today's program, leading content and community here at Brand Innovators. But I really enjoyed learning about how your marketing strategies for Henkel have evolved over the years and how you continue to integrate cultural relevance into your brand's DNA. Looking forward to seeing what you do next and having you both back again soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Brand Innovators. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. So as I mentioned, I'm Claire Vandenberg, the CRM content and community lead here at Brand Innovators, and I'll be emceeing the rest of today's program. So with that, next up to the stage, we have another inspiring female duo. We are thrilled to welcome Jill Thomas, Chief Marketing Officer for the PGA Tour Superstore, who is here to discuss how to leverage a fan base to drive commerce in a historically male-dominated industry. And here to facilitate the conversation is Erica McCoy, Chief Marketing Officer at Resonate. Hello, Erica. Hi, Jill. How are you? I think you're on mute, Erica.
Thank you. Hi, how are you? Great to see you.
Great to see you. Go ahead and take it away, Erica. I'll be back in about 40 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here. I'm really excited. First of all, I'm not sure if everyone in the audience is familiar with the PGA Tour Superstore or had the pleasure of meeting Jill, but I want to have Jill take a minute just to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about PGA Superstore. Jill?
Hey, it's good to see you again, Erica. So I'm Jill Thomas. I'm the Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer here at the PGA Tour Superstore. The PGA Tour Superstore is the largest specialty golf retailer in the world. We have 46 stores here in the US, and we are growing pretty significantly, obviously fueled by this amazing year we've had in the golf industry, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But we are an experiential golf retailer. Our stores are large. We have hitting bays and a huge assortment, and it's really a destination retail environment. And we're really focused on golf, obviously through our name PGA Tour Superstore, and tennis. What some may not realize is that we are owned by Arthur Blank as part of Arthur Blank's family of businesses under the umbrella of A&B Sports and Entertainment, which includes his other holdings such as the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United. So we're based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. I did not know that about tennis, so good to know. So you mentioned it's been a wild 18 months. I like to think about it as pandemic, protest, pandemic again, politics, back to pandemic. With that in mind, how has the pandemic impacted the business that you've seen and the growth at PGA Superstore?
Yeah, it's funny to be sitting here in almost July of 2021 and on really a record and historic year for our business on the given everything that's happened in our world. There's almost sort of a bit of a guilty feeling about that. But the way that it really has resonated with us is we've provided an outlet for people in this time of need. So, one of the things, and you and I have talked about this, whoever came up with the term social distancing, I know had good intentions, but, as we know, the health and mental health of our communities are really struggling with that whole idea. So I think what has happened with golf is people have discovered that it's a way to what we say physically distance, but stay socially connected in an outdoor environment, in a healthy environment, in a time where people were really looking for a way to separate and think about their mind, body, and spirit. And golf has provided that outlet to over 25 million people in this country, and it has been discovered by a whole new group of people, which is the really exciting part, and then rediscovered by sort of that core audience who maybe had lost, who had kind of lost touch with the game. So it is a really exciting time to be in the golf industry. And you know, the way that I really like to think about it is, you know, we're just providing this outlet to help people kind of deal with what we've all been dealing with over the last 18 months.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting how you say so many people went back to golf because it was something where you could be outside, still feel productive, still have a hobby, right? And so I love the phrase physically distanced but socially connected. Somehow everybody missed that, but that's really what we need. So obviously this is a women in retail event. So I have to ask, what does it mean to you to be a female leader in your category?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I've told this story before in my career. I've worked on a lot of different brands, really great brands, from Disney to PepsiCo to some QSR brands where the female is usually the decision maker. And this is really the first assignment I've had in my entire career where it's a very male focused business and customer. And that is obviously one of the fun parts about what's happening right now is that it's growing and diversity in the game is expanding. So it took me a minute really to adjust. If I'm being really honest, it wasn't as easy as I would have assumed it to be, where you just sort of, hey, I understand marketing. I understand how to connect consumers to brands and brands to consumers. And so I'll just come in and do what I do. But honestly, it was a bit of a transition for me to be surrounded by a lot of men who generally are extremely, like I call them the tip of the spear, or sometimes we say inside baseball. They're, you know, it's such a sport where there's a huge amount of passion from the fan base, and they talk to each other in almost like code. So in order to make the game more inclusive, I'm always trying to break the code down. And so I see myself as a good ambassador to kind of break down some of those barriers so we can make the game more inclusive. You know, my role is the communication side of the brand. So I really want to focus on that and say, hey, you know, there's terminology that we use, there's things that we take for granted that we really need to kind of break down if we want to make this game more accessible to all. At the same time, you know, we pride ourselves on our connection to the PGA Tour and our authenticity and the fact that there is no better place or retailer to partner with if you want to elevate your game. So we have to kind of be inside baseball and really know the game. So it's a balancing act all the time. You know, for me personally, it's been fun. Of course, everyone's very welcoming. Sometimes I say things like they'll, you know, when they're having conversations and they're talking about something, I might say, hey, does the average golfer understand that? Or, you know, does the average consumer understand that? And then we sort of address those things head on, as I have a tendency to do. I'm pretty direct or straightforward. So it's been a challenge, but also a welcome challenge. And I think that the questioning of some of these things is really breaking through and allowing us to reach new audiences and be more personalized and adapted to, you know, to new people in the game, whether it's experience or men versus women or just different audiences altogether.
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about the growth and the future growth for your market. You know, you do have to expand. And so really what you're talking about is leveraging your brand to expand the audience and grow people who love golf, like love golf lovers or golf players. Which reminds me of a question that you asked me, which I thought was so telling. You said to me, you know, do I consider myself a golfer? Am I a golfer? And I didn't know how to answer that. And so it really gets to what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really funny. I can't think of another example. And you and I were talking about the running example. If someone says, are you a runner? It's kind of a yes or no question. But for some reason, golf really causes people to hesitate. So it's like, hey, are you a golfer? Well, you know, what does that mean? I think there's this assumption that if I say, yes, I am a golfer, that I somehow have this superpower and, you know, a very extra special skill set, and I'm a fabulous golfer. Well, that's not true. Very few people are fabulous golfers. I think that's one of the big barriers that we have to work through as when we invite more people into the game. Less than 40% of all golfers will break 100. And, if you know par is 72, that's what the professionals are shooting. You're in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm not a golfer because I don't play at that level. Well, that's not true. If you get out there and you try your best and you swing that golf club, you are a golfer. If you go to Top Golf, if you swing it in your driving range in your backyard, you're a golfer. And the more people we can get to say, I am a golfer with confidence, regardless of your skill level, I think the better off this game will be and the more inclusive it will be. And that really, for me, is my mission in life, is really to help people understand that you're a golfer. If you have an interest in the sport, you're a golfer. So I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think it's a really good litmus test for, to kind of test this theory out. And I've been playing golf my entire life, and I struggled with it when I was first starting. And in fact, when I was interviewing for the role and people were asking me, as I was going through interview to interview to interview, hey, are you a golfer? I was like, yes. But the answer was yes. I grew up around the game. So I thought that was an interesting insight. It's a little focus group of one, but as I've tested the theory and some of our consumer research, I think I'm right about this. And I really appreciate that the PGA Tour and the golf industry, the PGA of America, the LPGA, the USGA have all gotten together to launch this campaign called Make Golf Your Thing. And it's really about that insight, that how can we make people comfortable and embraced by this game, which we all know is not an easy game to play. But with places like Top Golf and a lot of these new emerging concepts, like here in Atlanta, we have one called Fairway Social. It's just all about embracing new people and getting people more comfortable.
It's so true. And I think I never thought about it until you said that, because other tests would be, sure, I'm a runner. No one asked me if I ran a marathon or if I ran, do I run an 8-minute mile? Does that make me a runner? But like when it came to golf, I think there is an expectation that, I have to be good in order to say I'm a golfer, or I have to be good in order to go out and play. And I think it's probably even one of the reasons, people hesitate to go out with colleagues, or, and you can see that if you're someone who didn't grow up with golf or doesn't feel comfortable with golf, and you might not step into that, social work environment and take on a game of golf because you would feel concerned. You might be, feel like you're not really up for that. And that could keep people out of the game. So I love that focus, like you said, the PGA. And also, we talked about one of the campaigns that you've been running, Girl Got Drive, I think, if I've got it right, which I just love. I have a daughter, so I totally get that. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that's impacted, your store, of course, right? The performance and the growth that you've seen, and maybe even a little bit of your own team's perspective.
Yeah, I love that you asked me about this. It's something I'm really, really proud of. And I love how my team's perspective was changed, because quite frankly, I adopted a mostly male team. And in the same way that I didn't always think like them, they certainly weren't always thinking like me. And so we've had a lot of conversation about, the discipline of marketing, how it's about customer first and not about, you. So that's been kind of interesting. But so earlier this year, we really we see the incredible growth of women in the game. Now, women doesn't mean beginner. And that, quite frankly, was sort of one of the things that I was dealing with as I'm new to the industry, and I'm meeting with the big manufacturers and the big brands that sort of run this business. Quite often, women were not a part of their product launches, their lineups, or their thought process, or when they were, they generally would talk about colors. Sometimes they say pink it and shrink it, and then it's for women. And my observation as a new person in the industry was it felt a little condescending, and I don't think they intended it that way, certainly, but I just think they didn't realize that, being female and being new to the game doesn't necessarily mean we're beginners. I mean, there's a lot of athletes, I think women today are very different in terms of their desire to compete and meet their personal best and achieve, from that standpoint. So, we were really asking ourselves, what are we doing to support new people to the game and women to the game? And we kind of recognized we really didn't have a voice, and we didn't have the insight that we needed. So we really invested in that. And obviously the demographics and the stats around the growth of the game, 50%, almost 50% of off-course golfers are women. And this is a really important emerging audience. And so we got real serious, and we developed a campaign called Girls Got Drive. And we partnered with International Women's Golf Day, Elisa Gaudet, who has put together a global initiative to drive awareness for women in golf. We were kind of fighting against an older initiative, which I mentioned to you. It's called Invite Her, was sort of a previous campaign, which again, for me, felt a little like you're missing the mark. I don't need to be invited. I'm maybe I'll invite you, So we really try to get underneath this insight, and I'm so proud of it. The perspective change for my team was, they kept, as we were writing briefs and we were trying to get the creative done, they kept saying, this is about empowering women in golf. And I kept saying, drop the golf part. This is just about supporting and empowering women and just making sure they feel confident to be in our store. They feel welcome. We're providing the right resources and the right instruction and the right tips and tricks, and that it's a place for them. And so we launched this campaign, and it was a labor of love for our team. And we launched it in right around June 1st, which is when International Women's Golf Day is, the first Tuesday of June. We launched the campaign, and it has a lot of legs, and I won't get into it, but it's really meant to be Girls Got Drive, Girls Got Initiative, Girls Got Style, Swagger, kind of fill in the blank. Like Girls Got Confidence, it's all the things that we want as women to, to really kind of, elevate our confidence is really kind of where it was coming from, especially with golf. How do we make people feel comfortable? Just get out there and play this game. Because I kind of feel like it's the last horizon. Like if I can conquer golf, if I can get out there with those colleagues that invite me, and I'm terrified that I'm going to, maybe I'm going to whiff the ball, or maybe I'm going to drive it 170 yards too. I just got to get out there. But we launched it in June. It's a tentpole for us. It'll continue on, and we have a ton of content and assets that we've developed. Super proud of the fact that when on International Women's Golf Day, we staffed our Indianapolis store entirely with women in every job function, from fitter to instructor and every other function in the store. While the women were running the store, the men were down the street at the Wheeler Mission in Indianapolis supporting a women and children's shelter. And it was really, it's not lip service. It's really a commitment at every level to growing the game and being inclusive to women, and in our company to welcoming in more women into leadership roles, into store roles, into our PGA professional certified trainers and fitters roles. Like, we want more women in the game. So I'm really proud of it, and we'll continue to work on it and tweak it and make it bigger. But it's probably the best work we've done.
I think it's amazing. And, it's so interesting to even think about, it's not even just about the game of golf, but taking that idea of empowering women from a very young age and doing, leveraging your brand to do the part that you can. And even that small adjustment to say, this is about empowering women in golf. Actually, no, this is just about empowering women. That small change makes a huge difference for the rest of their lives, and getting them into that game and getting them confident. It's such an amazing example too of where your brand can be authentic. I know we talked, in this, you heard the previous speakers talk about being authentic and, having brand values, and whether or not these brand values are authentic is very clear to your audience, right? Your shoppers and your potential shoppers recognize it right off the bat. So clearly, by not just taking the campaign, but staffing the store, going in and doing charity work on that day that supports women. Just such a great example of comprehensively taking the PGA Tour Superstore brand and really leaning into this area to drive significant growth, not only for women, but even for other, groups. And I think one of the things that you were talking about really interesting, going beyond females and adding girls and women to the game, you're really expanding your outreach to so many new segments, helping them to grow a love of golf, and also recognizing that that's where really the whole industry grows. I think people would be surprised maybe about some of the ways that you are, maybe non-traditional ways that you are really growing your brand into these new segments. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're really fortunate to be owned and led by Arthur Blank. He is not only an innovator in retail, but he is a person that fights very hard for social justice and issues that matter to the world beyond golf, beyond football, beyond any game. He is about giving back. So we have a set of core values. Put people first is one of them, which really says, in everything that we do, we have to find ways to be more inclusive. I know that DEI is like a very popular topic, but golf is tough because it hasn't always been seen as the most inclusive sport, and our athletes aren't always the most diverse. But I really like to point to the women's game. I mean, the women are, first of all, they're really, really good. And it is a very diverse group of women, and they are so talented. And it's like, for me, it provides great hope and great outlook to what the future of the game is going to look like. So we're very much into giving back. And one of our other core values is giving back to others. Arthur has signed the Giving Pledge, so he is all about giving back. He says to us all the time, our job is to make as much money as we can so we can give it back, and that is for real. He is a huge patron of the First Tee. I am on the board of the First Tee here in Metro Atlanta, and it is all about teaching character lessons through the game of golf. I mean, when you think about the kind of lessons that you learn in terms of integrity, it's the only sport that I can think of where you're your own umpire and judge, right? So there's all these lessons, honesty, all these things that you can learn. And so we really try to, we just announced yesterday, we've selected 40 young people from across the country through the First Tee to attend a leadership seminar in Montana at one of Arthur's ranches. And, we really do give back. I don't think we always tell the story. So I don't think it's, it hasn't historically been like the first thing we're going to talk about, but that's because it's very substantive and it means a lot to us. So whether we're reaching out to juniors, whether we're reaching out to different socioeconomic groups or groups of diversity or communities, here in Atlanta are very involved on the West Side and really trying to create experiences for a lot of the kids on the West Side of Atlanta. So, we're really trying to expand the game, the audience, but really we're trying to make a difference in the world. And I know that maybe that sounds, maybe those two things sound, in conflict with, you're a retailer. But honestly, if you dig deeper, you'll see that we're doing a lot of things, including, talking about voting. We just converted the stadium, as many of you know, here in Atlanta, we were the largest vaccination single site vaccinator for many months, and one of the earlier ones to do that. And that all really comes down to Arthur Blank's commitment to making a difference in the world. And that really permeates through the entire organization, which makes me really proud.
So many good examples. And it's interesting. We have there's so many great comments coming in too. I think it's Jared who was asking about his daughter and bringing his daughter. How do we remind her it's cool for a 12-year-old to be interested in golf? And it's girls, but it's also other groups. And I think one of the things you talked to me about was this new segmentation, kind of like new segments that you're thinking about. Because you're trying to grow, right? You're growing in an area that's very traditional, maybe very conservative, like you said, an audience persona that is maybe very kind of traditional, who we might imagine to be golfers. But really, there's all these new segments that are coming out, and you're creating so many new programs to lure them in, really, and get them to kind of realize that golf is a place for them too. Can you talk about some of those other programs that you're doing?
Yeah, I think that's probably some of the most important work, because the game is changing as we invite new people into the game. And, I sometimes tell the story about, young women and topics of diversity, like they're not having it, like in young men and women, like they are the most educated, culturally and racially diverse audience in any generation, and they're not having it. They're not. I think some of the issues we're having, I hope they're a little bit generational, and as our young people lead our country forward, they're really the ones making the difference. So I want to be really conscious of that, and I do think it's really important to make golf cool again. And I think we have a lot of players and luminaries within the world of golf that can help us do that. Yes, the core audience is exactly probably who you think it is, and they are the ones that spend the most, and they are definitely the most engaged in the game. But there are so many emerging audiences that we're trying to cultivate. So I call it the core traditional, which you can describe without my help. And then there's the core emerging, which looks at the game totally differently. It's about socially connecting with their friends. They're the ones listening to using their wingman to listen to music on the course. They are trying to connect with their friends. And yes, they're playing a game of golf and they love the game. Don't get me wrong, they want to do well at it, but they really value the time spent with others. And then there's the, women, and then, which is, we really need to talk to women differently. I mean, I don't want to get into like any anatomical conversation, but women have features about them that make them different. And we have to learn different. We have to hold the club in different ways. And like, nobody tells you that, when you're in, a lot of men aren't comfortable telling women that, but a female instructor will tell you that. And it's important. And then there's new to golf. And what you and I were talking about is this incredible explosion in new golfers. Now it's our job to keep them engaged. If we do not find ways to make them feel welcome and embraced, then, we'll go back to a stagnant industry as we were maybe 5 years ago. So, and then there's the junior segment. I mean, the young people, and, those are boys and girls who are both, again, they're growing up a little bit differently. They're not bogged down with some of the weight of, sort of old beliefs that some of us might be bogged down with, like, I can't do that, or it's expensive, or it takes too long, or I'm not good at that, therefore I can't do that. They're like, oh no, I can be good at anything. So they kind of don't bring to the course this mental thing, this barrier of, I'm not sure I can do that. They show up ready to go. I was just, my heart, be still my heart. I was just last week with a group of about 50 little girls with the First Tee of Metro Atlanta. They were doing a girls golf day last Tuesday, the day of the KPMG, the Women's Open that was here this past week. And these little people were just sitting there, eyes wide. We were talking about being bold and being brave, and they were just like ready to go, little sponges. And it gave me a lot of hope. It gave me a lot of excitement about what this game is going to look like, who's going to be playing, how do we make it more accessible. I just think the future is really bright for this game, and I'm really excited to be a part of connecting what we do to that bigger idea, which is making this a fun place for people to get out, get in touch with nature, get in touch, spend time with your friends. It's mind, body, and spirit. It's a mental game. You have to kind of get into your head and find mindfulness and peace, so I just think, obviously I love the game. I loved it before I got here, and I love it even more now. So I'm probably a little bit biased, but I I think if there's anybody out there that's thinking, well, I can't do that, or I'm not a golfer, I encourage you to give it a try. I think you'll be surprised.
Absolutely. I know. I feel like it always depends on who you played with. I just was always thankful to be outside. The courses are always beautiful. If we could get over the fact that you might lose a bunch of balls, and you're just there, like you said, having the social engagement. As the CMO, you've had to really work to engage different segments like this and bring them into the stores. And it's not just about, like you said, the sport. So some of the core segments really care about the best equipment, right? The best, right? But there's others, like other programs that you're running that are even, having products at all different price points to get some of those new players in. To your point, I love the improve your style game, right? And because there's so many different, and really there's a lot of influencers, a lot of new emerging folks in the golf space that are helping to fuel some of that.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we are growing too as a marketing organization. When I started a year and a half ago, we had 12 people in the marketing team. And in fact, of the 12, I think really only 3 that worked in marketing. The rest were kind of e-commerce merchandisers and specialists. And e-commerce wasn't a big part of our business. In fact, digital in general wasn't really a priority. Fast forward 18 months, the team's closer to 25. I think we'll end up around 30 to 36, somewhere in that neighborhood when we're kind of fully staffed. We've onboarded a person who's brilliant, who I recruited. I worked with him at the Walt Disney Company, and I recruited him from Under Armour. He's leading digital strategy and really bringing a fresh, cool, technical skill to our team. We're trying to get better. When we just hired our first social media manager yesterday, can you believe that? It was like my side hustle, and one of our brand managers, because we like the game and we're usually watching, so every once in a while we tweeted and stuff. I mean, it's that. So we have a long way to go. But again, that's what gets me really excited, because I can see, we're just scratching the surface of how we can connect with different audiences and different channels in different ways. So I would say, is if you go out and I've intrigued you at all and you look at PGA Tour Superstore and you look at our social feed and you're like, well, that's not all that great. Or, you're getting our emails every day and it's batch and blast still. Keep watching. We're getting smarter, we're getting better, and we're really trying to build something more meaningful that helps us foster relationships with customers and different customers and be more personalized and really find that way to connect at the right level. So for those core traditionals who want to talk about MOI, which stands for moment of inertia, and all kinds of crazy things that really serious golfers want to talk about, we'll talk to them about that and we'll create digital experiences for them. But for women, we might talk about other things, or for new to golf or juniors, parents of juniors. We are not even there yet in terms of segmentation and really programmatically communicating in an automated and personalized way. We're building, our loyalty program is being overhauled. I mean, we were really at the beginning of a journey, and as all the marketers out there know, how much fun is that? That's the funnest time ever. And I always say we're on this transformational journey to modern marketing, and it's going to be a 3-year process at least for us. And I think, I'm happy with where we are after 18 months, despite, a big challenge that we just overcame with COVID. I think it made us better. It expanded our audience, that's for sure, and that helped. And e-commerce, of course, took off like everybody else's did, which made us more digitally focused. So these are all good things. And the road is, long. We got a long way to go, but I think we're going to get there. We're going to do some cool stuff. And, if Girls Got Drive is an indication of what we're going to, I'm super excited about the future of the game, the future of our brand, and how we can maybe make a difference in the world in our own little way.
Absolutely. I think it's just, it's been, first of all, I commend you on the journey that you've been on. And I also wish you well, because you've got a way to go, and the fact that you are leading this transformation during a very, tough time for everyone. what's been accomplished is really amazing. I mean, the growth that you've seen, and like you said, really the recognition that now it's time to capitalize on it. I think there's so much for the audience that probably resonates with them in terms of that. And of course, personally, I love the story of the segmentation and how you're starting to really expand and better understand all of the different people that really comprise your audience, the different humans with different motives for shopping at the store and for being involved in the sport. And that's data is obviously near and dear and passionate to my heart, coming from Resonate and the Ignite platform. So I think I'm going through questions to see as they come in. And if anyone else has any other questions for Jill, please put them in the chat. I know I'm looking over all of our questions. I'm checking the chat. I think we're almost at time also. So it's been great talking to you. Jill, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all the ways that the PGA Tour Superstore is leading the charge to make golf a sport for everyone. If you haven't already done so, guys, make sure you follow them on social. Jill's asking, he wants you to keep up with her and her team. I know I'm going to keep up with her and see how things continue to evolve under her leadership. It's been absolutely a pleasure.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it always.
Thank you so much, Jill and Erica, for closing out our day on women in retail marketing. I loved hearing about the Girls Got Drive campaign and how you empower women by redefining who the golfer is. And I'm excited to see how the PGA Tour Superstore continues to evolve throughout this golf renaissance. And Erica, fabulous job moderating. So thank you both so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Today was an incredible day of programming and content from our speakers and moderators, and we're excited for all of our upcoming days on this topic as we see how inspiring female leaders continue to disrupt and progress the retail industry. And we hope you will all join Brand Innovators tomorrow on Wednesday, June 30th for the Identity and the Cookieless Future Summit at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from Gannett, Viacom CBS, Disney Streaming Services, Textile Fashion Group, Kimberly Clark, and many more. Thank you for joining